Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Wei Sim, founder and lead analyst at Homodeus Research. Thank you all for taking the time to join us today. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Dr. Krista Davies, Chief Operating Officer of Prominence Energy. The ticker is ASX PRM, and she is one of Australia's leading experts in natural hydrogen exploration. In fact, Krista was Australia's first PhD graduate specializing in hydrogen exploration, making her uniquely qualified to discuss this exciting and rapidly evolving industry. Now, before we begin, I'd like to highlight 3 reasons why I think Prominence is a company worth watching. Firstly, Prominence provides exposure to 2 highly strategic commodities, helium and natural hydrogen. Secondly, the company has secured a significant first mover position through its 100% owned Gawler Hydrogen Project in South Australia's Gawler Craton. And thirdly, Prominence is backed by exceptional technical expertise. And this is still a very young industry, and having a management team led by one of Australia's foremost hydrogen exploration scientists provides the company with a genuine competitive advantage as it progresses from exploration towards seismic surveys and ultimately drilling. With that, it's my pleasure to hand over to Dr. Krista Davies. Krista, thank you very much for joining us today. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Wei. So this morning I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Prominence Energy and our helium and natural hydrogen exploration portfolio in South Australia. It's important to note that this is not investment advice, and you should do your own research and take your own advice from a suitably qualified expert. So why Prominence to start off with? As Wei mentioned, we have a management team and we are run by a team who are specifically educated and experienced in natural hydrogen and helium exploration. So we're not just adding our hydrogen and helium portfolio into a bucket of other resources. We are specialists in this area. There's a very supportive macro environment for both clean energy and helium resources at the moment. We have one of the largest exploration portfolios in Australia and, in fact, probably the world. We hold that portfolio 100%. So that gives us extremely good exposure to the natural hydrogen and helium trend. We do have some other gas potential in our portfolio. There are areas where there are potential for methane, so this gives us this multi-gas stream as well. We have identified leads and we are looking to progress those immediately. We've recently announced that we'll be looking toward drilling mid next year, so that's really exciting times coming up, and we are currently very much at an entry-level valuation, considering the potential upside that our portfolio has in it. So why helium? So helium is extremely important because it is non-substitutable in several critical industries. The first being in the medical industry for MRI machines. So MRI machines require helium for cooling, and up until recently, that was the world's #1 use of helium. However, now the #1 use of helium is for the manufacture of semiconductors, and this is on the back of AI and data centers being built around the world. So we are extremely reliant on helium. Now, the issue with helium is currently Australia has no helium resources of its own. We are entirely reliant on international imports of helium. Currently, where does the helium come from? It comes from the USA, it comes from Qatar, and it comes from Russia. So not particularly stable source for our helium. And in fact, since the trouble in the Middle East and the bombings in Qatar, up to 1/3 of that helium, the global helium supply, has suddenly come off the market. So we're very sensitive to global supply here in helium. So ensuring that we have our own supply, our own helium resource in Australia is really critical for our nation and for our industries. And alongside that, as you can imagine, the helium price has been increasing dramatically in the last couple of years. Okay, so why hydrogen? Well, actually, hydrogen is already a huge market, but it does have the potential to actually lead us into a net zero carbon future. So unlike currently hydrogen, 98% of the world's hydrogen is grey hydrogen. So it's uses methane as a feedstock, but it does not sequester the CO2. So it's quite polluting source. And we use that hydrogen for fertilizers, for food production, petrochemicals, methanol production, etc. If we can find cleaner sources of hydrogen, then we've got the potential to use that hydrogen for power generation, transport, green steel and cement generation, as well as for heat sources. And why natural hydrogen? Well, when we extract natural hydrogen, it is a primary resource. Unlike green hydrogen that you might have heard about, green hydrogen uses resources to create the hydrogen. So we use renewable energy, we use water and create hydrogen. So it's manufactured. What we're looking for is natural hydrogen, naturally occurring beneath the ground. And when we use that hydrogen as a fuel source, the only byproduct is pure water. So this is the ultimate green energy source. So why Prominence and why now? Well, as I mentioned, there's a huge market for hydrogen and helium in our nation, and hydrogen is currently at a low point, if you like, in the hype cycle. It's got a bit of a bad reputation for some of the green hydrogen projects that have not gone ahead, and so we're suffering a little bit of that reputation. So right now we're extremely well valued because of that knock-on effect. Our acreage is huge. We've got a massive exposure, and that was very deliberate because this is a very new exploration industry. We need to have a lot of running room. We need to be able to explore different play types, see what works, and then have more of that in our portfolio. And that's the approach that we've taken. We are also focusing very much on a capital efficient exploration where we have very low cost drilling and we try to do our work as low cost and low impact as possible. So the Gawler Hydrogen Project is a very, very significant hydrogen and helium province. So gold hydrogen, you will have heard of, have intersected hydrogen and helium on the Yorke Peninsula. So that's proven natural hydrogen and helium in the rocks of the Yorke Peninsula. If you have a look at our portfolio is wholly contained within the same Gawler craton as the neighbouring gold hydrogen Ramsay project. And we have multiple different play types across that portfolio, a 100% working interest in operatorship. So that gives us a lot of optionality for future partnerships. If we have a look at the Eyre project specifically, so this is the southern part of our portfolio, closest to that gold hydrogen portfolio, where they've intersected helium up to 36% and hydrogen over 90% concentrations in the gas stream. The pink dots here indicate what we know is one of the key source rocks for that natural hydrogen and helium, and that is the Hilltipper granites. And you can see that the Hilltipper granites extend right across our Eyre project. So we know that we have the source rocks and we have an analogous system already demonstrating potential for commercial flows, and high helium and hydrogen concentrations. We've recently, just this year, done some on-ground validation of the natural hydrogen and helium potential, and this was in the form of a soil gas study. So the soil gas study revealed hydrogen and helium measured in the field, as well as we took gas samples and we sent them away to the lab. We had helium measurements from the field up to 63 ppm. So the image on the left there shows the distribution of those Hilterberg granites in the pink and the distribution of the helium in purple that we measured. So you can see there's a direct correlation between those granite source rocks and the helium that we were measuring in the field. And to give you some context, helium is the 63 ppm helium. That's normal ppm of helium in air is under 5 ppm. So that's a very high measurement of helium in the soil gas. And then we also set those gas samples we sent to the lab. We analysed those and they came back 64% of them had natural hydrogen in the soil gas. So that's a great result. And what we could see is that a lot of those, the strongest of those anomalies are actually associated with the structural highs through the area. So now we've got some evidence showing those source rocks are working, they're generating the helium, they're generating the hydrogen, and we can see the association with structural highs. So this is now getting to really exciting validation of our leads and prospects portfolio. We also have done some remote sensing satellite work using the Sentinel-2 satellite imagery, and this helps us to identify past where we've done our field work, where there's helium and natural hydrogen and potentially even methane anomalies may be spread across the Eyre Peninsula. And several of the strongest anomalies did coincide with our independent soil gas anomalies. So that's exciting. We're now starting to get this multi-layer validation of the natural hydrogen and helium being present and not just in our PEL 803, but right across our portfolio in the Eyre Peninsula. Moving on to the northern part of our project now, the Northern Hinge project. It's a really exciting area. It offers, again, this low-cost, high-impact exploration potential. We've got multiple structural targets here. And what's really exciting about this area is the natural springs in this area actually bubble gas. And we have gas analysis from those springs where up to 2% of the gas stream is helium and up to 74% of that gas that's bubbling up in those springs is methane. So this gives us confidence that we're again in a good source generating potential for both helium, but also here for methane as part of the gas stream as well. So that's the opportunity there to add the methane in as an extra commodity. This is quite a complicated map, but just showing how we have not just one or two indications of helium right across our Northern Hinge project. We have dozens and dozens of samples of helium bubbling to the surface in this area at high concentrations. So this suggests that those helium-enriched fluids are moving right through this area. So very exciting for our exploration potential. Probably the jewel in the crown of our Northern Hinge project is our Seabrook prospect, and it is a positive flower structure. We have some seismic data. So most of the areas we don't have a lot of seismic data, but this is one area we do have seismic data. We can map this lead, and we also see above where the faults intersect the seal, we see some little gas chimneys. So that is a possible indication that this prospect could be filled to spill. So that's very exciting prospect in our portfolio. We have not yet done our prospective resources. That's something that's going to be happening during August and September this year. We'll be having an independent evaluation of those prospective resources, and we'll be able to announce that after we finalise that review. However, what I can say is this is a very large prospect, up to 290 square kilometres. If we have a look at the value proposition, I've mentioned a couple of times now that PRM is extremely well valued at the moment, in my opinion. And why do I say that? If you have a look at just portfolio size versus market capitalisation, you can see that we are possibly the lowest valuation in terms of ASX listed companies looking at natural hydrogen and helium, despite having one of the largest portfolios. So we expect significant re-rating when we have completed our risking and ranking of our targets and our prospective resources. And we will then be looking next year to do some potentially do a little seismic to go over the crest of the structures, otherwise into a multi-well campaign. So as I mentioned, the near-term catalysts are that prospective resources report, the drilling targets, and our maiden drilling program next year. So this is just a snapshot of who we are. Wayne gave me a lovely introduction, and this is our capital structure at the moment. We are quite small in terms of our market capitalisation, but we have a very strong team in terms of our directors and supportive shareholders. So that's all from me for now, Wayne.
Perfect. Thanks, Krista. That was a great introduction. We've got quite a few questions which have come through online. So let's just start with the first one, which is on the helium side. You mentioned that it's all being imported at the moment. So is there anyone else in Australia who's attempting helium right now? And is this something that eventually we'd be looking to export, or would it just be for Australia use?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in fact, Gawler Hydrogen are currently working on doing some production testing for helium in the Yorke Peninsula. But there is a significant market, and with the market increasing, there is definitely the potential, if we have multiple helium projects in Australia, to export some of that helium. Because it is such a high value product, exporting can be a lot more economical than other resources such as even natural gas. So because it's so highly valued, exporting will be a lot more within reach in terms of a development plan.
Okay. And in terms of, I guess, energy security or minerals, given that, we are importing it all at the moment, is there any support that you could potentially see coming through from the government?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and there has been some discussions certainly in AEP about whether helium should be included as a critical resource. So we'll have to watch this space.
Okay. One more, just in terms of that demand profile. You mentioned MRI machines before, but that new demand coming through from chips, semis, AI. Do you have any sense as to what kind of demand we could see from that, and how that could change the demand profile of helium going forward?
Yeah, so the demand is expected to increase, I think, tenfold in the next 5 to 10 years, simply because of that the reliance on helium in the data centers and semiconductor manufacture.
Okay. The next question is, what is the timeline for PFS, DFS through to FID?
It's so next year we'll be doing our exploration drilling. And that will help us define the size of anything that we do discover, any discoveries we do make. And then following that, we would do our appraisal and development plans. So it does take some time before we would be potentially exporting helium or natural hydrogen. It's probably, I would say, at least a 5-year timeline to get to that stage.
Right, understood. Yeah, I mean, I do feel that for helium and hydrogen, it is longer dated, so it makes sense. Um, Coming back to that demand for helium, so you mentioned it was all really being imported at this point in time. Is there a reason why in Australia we haven't tried to locally extract helium in the past?
We previously have produced our own helium. So when the Bayu-Undan field was operating in Northern Australia, helium was produced as a byproduct of the LNG production.
Mm.
So we previously have had our own helium supply, but that has since shut down when the Bayu-Undan field a couple of years ago became depleted. And since then, we've been relying on international imports.
Ah, okay. Next is just what makes the Gawler Craton geology so promising for hydrogen generation, and given how leaky H2 can be, and yeah, and allow its accumulation.
Yeah, great question. So the Gawler Craton, what we need to generate natural hydrogen using radiolysis is old hot granites, so radioactive granites in the basement that are old and that are generating a lot of heat that splits the groundwater naturally into the hydrogen and the oxygen. And also that radioactivity in the breakdown is a similar process that actually generates the helium. So for both of those processes, the ultimate area to be located is over the top of a very old granitic craton. And that is what the Gawler Craton is. It's one of the oldest cratons in the world, and it has an enormous heat anomaly. So we know that those granites are generating natural hydrogen and helium. So it's a great place in the world to be. And the leakiness of the hydrogen you asked about. So that's part of what we're looking for. We're looking for areas where we can trap the hydrogen. However, what's often people often believe that hydrogen needs a super seal like a salt. However, because hydrogen is such a small molecule, in fact, there's a very high interfacial tension between hydrogen and any kind of water. So, for example, if we have a water saturated seal like a shale, hydrogen can't easily move through that. It will seep over geological time, but it won't leak out like a sieve. So we actually, and there's been a lot of research done on this, any areas where we can trap, for example, 100 metres of methane, we can trap 84 metres of hydrogen. So you need slightly better seals, but it's not massively different, in fact, compared to methane.
Okay, understood. And near term, what is the best way to monetize your potential hydrogen reserves?
I think by drilling and finding the reserves. So we need to drill. And what we are aiming to do next year is not just drill one well. We don't want to drill one play. We are aiming for a multi-well campaign, as I mentioned, because this is a new resource play that we're looking for. We have multiple play types. So what we want to do in our drilling campaign is test each of those individual play types. And they will have independent risk profiles. So we increase our chance of understanding the system and potentially finding the resources.
Right. And what do you think is needed to secure investor confidence that natural hydrogen exists and can potentially be harvested economically?
Well, natural hydrogen does exist. We know it does because Gold Hydrogen have produced it, and it's been produced in Mali in the Burukabugou field. It has been produced in Udachnia in Russia. So we know that natural hydrogen does exist. The question is, can it be trapped and exploited commercially? I think what investors want to see next are flow rates. So we're very much focusing on areas where we can have free gas accumulations, columns of gas, of free gas, rather than entrained gas in water projects, like some of the projects that have been discussed globally. So we're aiming for free gas. If we can show that we can flow free gas to surface at a high hydrogen concentration, then I think that's going to be a game changer for the investors.
Great. And what further discussions are needed with local landowners or First Peoples and environmental studies?
So that's all part of our process, and we've been working through that process with the recent work that we've done for our soil gas sampling, for example. That's all part of the planning that goes into any kind of work that we do on the ground. We have to have all of those stakeholder engagements, and that is the day-to-day business that's happening behind the scenes in Prominence when we're planning these projects. So we're also at the moment, we have been the entire time working on native title agreements and working through those. So all of that is part of the process of getting onto the ground and doing the exploration.
Excellent. There's a few questions coming through in regards to number of shares on issue. I think, you also mentioned your capital efficient strategy and, whether there's a need to come to market. So are you able just to give us a bit of color broadly around, those different metrics?
We're currently fully funded for our 2026 campaign. When we get to the end of this year, when we have done our prospective resources reports, then we'll be looking at all of the different ways that we might fund next year's drilling campaign. And that may be a combination of partnerships, grants, as well as potentially capital. So we're looking at all of the different potential ways that we'll fund that multi-well campaign. But as we recently mentioned, the drilling costs are very low. So we're looking at around $5 million next year for that, up to 3 wells, either 2 wells and some seismic or 3 wells. So we're looking at very lean drilling, very low cost. And so that's to maintain the shareholder value as much as possible. But we'll be looking at all of the different types of funding options for us.
Great. And longer term, will you keep 100% of your projects?
Not necessarily, no. If we can find a good partner to help us through our drilling campaign, then we'll certainly be looking at that. Yeah. And that's one of the benefits of having 100% right now, is it gives us that optionality to bring partners in to help fund future work.
Got it. There's a question here just on what specific technical triggers or resource estimates need to land between now and Q4 before PRM make a final decision on the mid-27 exploration drilling campaign?
We are aiming to do prospective resources reports both for the Eyre project and the Northern Ginge project, and that's important because it helps us to risk and rank our prospects and leads portfolios and decide on the top 3 or 4 candidates that we might choose for our drilling campaign. But we expect to have that work done by the end of September, early October.
And given that an estimated 2 to 3 well program cost would be roughly $5 million, at what stage of target ranking will Prominence actively begin opening data rooms for prospective farm-in partners?
Well, that hasn't been decided yet, but the obvious trigger point will be when we start our drill planning, and we're planning to start that in October, November this year.
Excellent. One more, just maybe touching on that methane potential that you talked about. Can you talk about the timeline and what kind of potential we could see coming through from methane? I appreciate it's not necessarily the focus at this point in time.
So we will obviously test the gas stream, and there is a potential for that methane in the Northern Hinge project. The benefit of having methane in that area is we're not too far from the Cooper Basin gas pipeline. So development of methane in the Northern Hinge area is something that could be developed with relative ease, depending on the size of the prospect. So that remains to be seen, but we've got a lot of optionality there.
Excellent. Well, we've just hit half an hour, and I think we've gone through pretty much all the questions. So thank you for your time, Krista. It was a great presentation, and I think that comps table that you showed really highlights the relative value and upside potential for Prominence. So exciting story, exciting times.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you, Eyre. It's been good fun. And thanks everyone for joining.
Excellent. We'll close it off there. Thank you everyone for joining.
Yes, thanks.
Bye.